Chapter 65 of Lorna Doone. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Michelle Harris. Lorna Doone by R.D. Blackmore. Chapter 65. Falling Among Lambs. That faithful creature, whom I began to admire as if she were my own, which is no little thing for a man to say of another man's horse, stopped in front of a low black shed, such as we call a linhay; and here she uttered a little greeting, in a subdued and softened voice, hoping to obtain an answer, such as her master was wont to give in a cheery manner. Receiving no reply, she entered, and I, who could scarce keep up with her, poor Kickums being weary, leaped from his back and followed. There I found her sniffing gently, but with great emotion, at the body of Tom Faggus. A corpse poor Tom appeared to be, if ever there was one in this world, and I turned away, and felt unable to keep altogether from weeping. But the mare either could not understand, or else would not believe it. She reached her long neck forth, and felt him with her under lip, passing it over his skin as softly as a mother would do to an infant. And then she looked up at me again, as much as to say, "He is all right." Upon this I took courage, and handled poor Tom, which being young I had feared at first to do. He groaned very feebly, as I raised him up, and there was the wound, a great savage one, whether from pike thrust or musket ball, gaping and welling in his right side, from which a piece seemed to be torn away. I bound it up with some of my linen, so far as I knew how, just to staunch the flow of blood, until we could get a doctor. Then I gave him a little weak brandy and water, which he drank with the greatest eagerness, and made sign to me for more of it. But not knowing how far it was right to give cordial under the circumstances, I handed him unmixed water that time, thinking that he was too far gone to perceive the difference. But herein I wronged Tom Faggus, for he shook his head and frowned at me. Even at the door of death he would not drink what Adam drank, by whom came death into the world. So I gave him a little more eau de vie, and he took it most submissively. After that he seemed better, and a little colour came into his cheeks, and he looked at Winnie and knew her, and would have her nose in his clammy hand, though I thought it not good for either of them. With the stay of my arm he sat upright, and faintly looked about him, as if at the end of a violent dream, too much for his power of mind. Then he managed to whisper, "Is Winnie hurt?" "As sound as a roach," I answered. "Then so am I," said he. "Put me upon her back, John. She and I die together." Surprised as I was at this fatalism, for so it appeared to me, of which he had often shown symptoms before, but I took them for mere levity, now I knew not what to do. For it seemed to me a murderous thing to set such a man on horseback, where he must surely bleed to death, even if he could keep the saddle. But he told me, with many breaks and pauses, that unless I obeyed his orders, he would tear off all my bandages, and accept no further aid from me. While I was yet hesitating, a storm of horse at full gallop went by, tearing, swearing, bearing away all the country before them. Only a little pollard hedge kept us from their bloodshot eyes. "Now is the time," said my cousin Tom, so far as I could make out his words. "On their heels I am safe, John, if I have only Winnie under me. Winnie and I die together." Seeing this strong bent of his mind, stronger than any pains of death, I even did what his feeble eyes sometimes implored, and sometimes commanded. With a strong sash, from his own hot neck, bound and twisted, tight as wax, around his damaged waist, I set him upon Winnie's back, and placed his trembling feet in stirrups, with a band from one to another, under the good mare's body, so that no swerve could throw him out. And then I said, "Lean forward, Tom. It will stop your hurt from bleeding." He leaned almost on the neck of the mare, which, as I knew, must close the wound; and the light of his eyes was quite different, and the pain of his forehead unstrung itself, as if he felt the undulous readiness of her volatile paces under him. "God bless you, John, I am safe," he whispered, fearing to open his lungs much. "Who can come near my Winnie mare? A mile of her gallop is 10 years of life. Look out for yourself, John Ridd." He sucked his lips, and the mare went off, as easy and swift as a swallow. Well, thought I, as I looked at Kickums ignobly cropping up a bit of grass, I have done a very good thing, no doubt, and ought to be thankful to God for the chance. But as for getting away unharmed, with all these scoundrels about me, and only a foundered horse to trust in, good and spiteful as he is, upon the whole, I begin to think that I have made a fool of myself, according to my habit. No wonder Tom said, "Look out for yourself." I shall look out from a prison window, or perhaps even out of a halter, and then what will Lorna think of me? Being in this wistful mood, I resolved to abide a while, even where fate had thrown me, for my horse required good rest, no doubt, and was taking it, even while he cropped, with his hind legs far away stretched out, and his forelegs gathered under him, and his muzzle on the molehills, so that he had 5 supportings from his mother earth. Moreover, the linhay itself was full of very ancient cow dung, than which there is no balmier and more maiden soporific. Hence I resolved, upon the whole, though grieving about breakfast, to light a pipe and go to sleep, or at least until the hot sun should arouse the flies. I may have slept 3 hours, or 4, or it might be even 5, for I never counted time, while sleeping, when a shaking more rude than the old landlady's brought me back to the world again. I looked up with a mighty yawn, and saw 20 or so of foot soldiers. "This linhay is not yours," I said, when they had quite aroused me, with tongue, and hand, and even sword prick. "What business have you here, good fellows?" "Business bad for you," said one, "and will lead you to the gallows." "Do you wish to know the way out again?" I asked very quietly, as being no braggadocio. "We will show thee the way out," said one, "and the way out of the world," said another. "But not the way to heaven," said one chap, most unlikely to know it; and thereupon they all fell wagging, like a bed of clover leaves in the morning, at their own choice humour. "Will you pile your arms outside," I said, "and try a bit of fair play with me?" For I disliked these men sincerely, and was fain to teach them a lesson. They were so unchristian in appearance, having faces of a coffee colour, and dirty beards half over them. Moreover, their dress was outrageous, and their address still worse. However, I had wiser let them alone, as will appear afterwards. These savage looking fellows laughed at the idea of my having any chance against some 20 of them. But I knew that the place was in my favour, for my part of it had been fenced off, for weaning a calf most likely, so that only 2 could come at me at once; and I must be very much out of training if I could not manage 2 of them. Therefore I laid aside my carbine, and the 2 horse pistols, and they, with many coarse jokes at me, went a little way outside, and set their weapons against the wall, and turned up their coat sleeves jauntily, and then began to hesitate. "Go you first, Bob," I heard them say. "You are the biggest man of us, and Dick the wrestler along of you. Us will back you up, boy." "I'll warrant I'll draw the badger," said Bob, "and not a tooth will I leave him. But mind, for the honour of Kirke's lambs, every man stands me a glass of gin." Then he and another man made a rush, and the others came double quick march on their heels. But as Bob ran at me most stupidly, not even knowing how to place his hands, I caught him with my knuckles at the back of his neck, and with all the sway of my right arm sent him over the heads of his comrades. Meanwhile Dick the wrestler had grappled me, expecting to show off his art, of which indeed he had some small knowledge; but being quite of the light weights, in a second he was flying after his companion Bob. Now these two men were hurt so badly, the light one having knocked his head against the lintel of the outer gate.